Hello, wonderful, beautiful people, and welcome to the Black Psychologist Podcast, also known as the eighth wonder of the world. Thanks for listening wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Rate us, review us, give us 5 stars, because anything less than 5 stars is uncivilized. I am one half of your humble and gracious host, Dr. Kyle Osborne. He is I, and I am him. And of course, y'all know I'm not flying this aircraft by myself. I'm here with my friend, my brother, my brethren. Once again, the incredible, the uncorruptible Dr. Jason Coleman, ladies and gentlemen. What's going on, good brother?
What's going on, bro? Another good week. Busy, but blessed. Blessed to be here. That's a good thing. The Yankees keep losing, so that's hard to watch. But football season is starting soon, so
Yeah, man, yeah, we need that. That
you
can't
know,
start.
and eventually the Cowboys will disappoint me, but I think the Jets are gonna have something interesting for us to watch. So you know how I go. What you think about your quarterback down there?
He's looking all right. I think it was maybe moving a little too fast for him. He threw an interception, but I mean, he's talented, man. He's talented. I just need him to stay healthy through the season and play well. Like I don't expect us. Like I'm not naive enough to say we're gonna go from 3 or 4 wins or whatever we had last year to making the playoffs. Like that's not realistic. Like it's possible, but like I'm not expecting that. But if we can make progress from last year and then still end up getting a good draft pick, so we can get a good receiver, because that's what we got to get him. Like if he plays well enough where we're able to cement him, like, all right, this is our franchise quarterback for the future, which I'm pretty confident that he will be. Now it's time to go out and get him some weapons. Right, let's go out and get him a receiver. Let's go out and get him somebody that's coming out the draft. And there's a couple good receivers coming out the draft this year. Like they've been like the mock drafts that they put out. So yeah, man, it's gonna be cool. We're gonna see what it's hitting for. You know.
All right. I mean, listen, man. I think we're gonna get some good football this year. So I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.
Definitely looking forward to it.
On Netflix, the series Quarterback. It's good.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna lie, man. Like, I'm not really interested. Like, listen, I heard it was good. I love Patrick Mahomes. That's my guy. I love football, but I'm not a big guy. Like, I'm a big fan, but I'm not like one of these dudes that's gonna be watching like behind the scenes documentaries and all this if it's not related to the Cowboys. Like, I'm just not.
No. All right. Well,
So
they'll have your boy on probably next year. They'll get him on there. You know what I mean?
I mean, listen, I don't think we'll ever be on there. Well, I'm talking about Hard Knocks. We ain't gonna be on there because we're gonna be in the playoffs. But quarterback, it is what it is. Man. But I heard it was
also. I'd be remiss also if we didn't wish a happy belated birthday to the original Dr. Coleman, Papa Coleman. How was the birthday for Pops, man?
Oh, it was good, man. 75 years old. 48 years. Serving Hudson County, Essex County. As a pediatrician, so that was big, man. And just giving him his flowers, man. Like while he's good, while he can receive them. So appreciate that.
Yeah, man, pictures look good. I'm like, look at that Coleman out there. I was like, okay, that's the blueprint right there.
Yeah, that was a good night. Everything was first class.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. All right, Jason, let's get into it.
Word.
I know you've been getting asked probably, by your friends and family. I know I've been getting asked about it. The brawl down there in Alabama, in Montgomery. All right, it was there's footage everywhere. The internet had a blast with it, all types of memes and nicknames, all kinds of things, right? And so much footage is out there from like all different angles. So I'm gonna try to give like a brief summation of what took place and kind of our viewpoint on it. All right. So for those of you that don't know, earlier this month there was a melee, there was a brawl, whatever title or however you want to label it, that took place outside of a dock. down there in Montgomery, Alabama. So what took place was that a dock worker was attempting to get a group of gentlemen to move his or their platoon so a dinner cruise city riverboat could dock. It was reported that the staffer, he asked them about 5 or 6 times to move their boat. When the group of them refused to move their pontoon from the riverfront, a gentleman, the staffer, and another staff member from the cruise liner, they untied their boat that belonged to the gentlemen, who were all white. I want to mind you, let me preface this by saying that also for people who aren't aware. The group of that owned the boat or that were on the boat were all white, males and females. So the staffers, after again requesting them to move the boat numerous times, took it upon themselves to remove the rope and moved it about I think they cut 3 steps or down to the right, and then retied it to the post so the cruise liner, or the not the cruise liner but the other riverfront casino boat, could dock. So after that, they proceeded to curse out the staff member, threaten him, and then he was assaulted. Right, he was assaulted in his face, and then somebody hit him from behind. And after that, the group from the rest of that party just started to just wail out on the dude. They started, just rolling on him, hitting him, kicking him, all kinds of different things. So from that point on, the things started to escalate, right? You saw one person that was from, I think he was also one of the staffers, come and try to de-escalate things. There was another staffer, or no, not even another staffer. It was just another kid. I think he was like 16. He jumped in the water and he's swimming over there, right? He's been getting all types of nicknames in the internet, calling him, all different types of nicknames, and Aquaman. They called him. What was I'm trying to think of another
Yo,
one.
I saw all kinds of like chair memes, all kinds
Yeah,
of
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah.
I see the dude with like that's what I was just looking at on my phone. Somebody
Yeah,
got a tattoo of a chair.
all
I
types of
mean,
shit.
it's
The hat is like the back signal now. All the types of things. So all different types of things. So as the
right.
chaos was escalating, right? I told you there were a couple people that tried to come to the staffers' defense, and then there were people, I guess, that were viewing it, that came down from all different angles, right? There were some folks, they went to help the guy that was getting jumped, and then they went to approach the assailants, and then it all out brawl just took place, man. I mean, Jay, the way it looked like, depending on what footage people saw, like it would look like the Royal Rumble out there, right? Like
Right.
you said, you mentioned people were in chairs and mind you, that the dude with the chair was totally out of line, right? Totally absurd. Like that was totally uncalled for. People were doing wrestling moves. I saw one dude get pile drive. Like it was crazy out there. Like it was really wild. So fast forward towards this long brawl that took place. I want to say currently 5 people, I think, have been arrested or turned themselves in, or whatever the case is. One being the person with the chair, and the other people that were arrested were the individuals that instigated and perpetrated the incident by attacking the staffer. So I want to say it's about 4 white suspects, and then the black guy that had the chair that was hitting people. Yeah, no, it was just totally out of control. Like it escalated really fast, and
Right.
um, pretty much like what I saw throughout of all of that. I mean, first and foremost, we here don't condone any type of violence. Get it if it's in a situation of self-defense, but just the way the whole thing just escalated and got out of hand is definitely something it shouldn't have got to that point. However, uh, all in all, I mean, what I observed was just you had a group of people who were pretty much exhausted at taking losses, right? In the face of what entitlement, this was privilege, right? The person was asked to move the boat multiple times. They decided not to. They're yelling and cursing at the staff, for so on and so forth, right? So pretty much this was, and then they took it upon themselves to get violent for no apparent reason. So what I saw was a group of people who were pretty much exhausted and tired of taking these L's, and whether, historically these L's and these losses that this group of people have been taking, whether it's been socially, economically, or physically. I mean, this is what I took to be. This is what enough is enough looks like, right? This is unfortunately like in its rawest form. Like this was that
Oh,
racial side.
you talking about the black people?
I'm talking about the black people. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I. You know what I mean? I saw a group of people saying like, "No, we're not putting up with this anymore." Like this was racial solidarity, unfortunately, through violence and through protection. Um, absolutely. I will, even though I don't like the violence aspect, I do commend the person, especially the kid, because I think he was like 16, 17 years old, who jumped in the water to come to the person's defense. Um,
That's the dude that swam all the way over
the
there.
boy that swam over, man. Listen, he had to be young, bro, because you know this. Like, we were just talking about age. I think that ain't our age, bro. That's not
Yeah, I
us.
get it.
And he got on. Listen, he swam across the
Yo,
water.
you would have
You know,
been winded by the time you got over there.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. He got up out the water and started fighting. But that's what that was like, pretty much in summary, right? You saw a group of people that you saw one person unfortunately being victimized, being assaulted, and you saw a group of people come to his defense. And like this was the solidarity that again took place through violence and protection. So that was kind of like my first kind of takeaway or of what I saw. How was it? What came up for you?
I, I mean, all right. Just first glance, like
First glance.
to be honest with you, it just looked like I don't mean to portray myself that as a person that's just frequently around violence, but it's like I've been around chaotic situations before, right? And it looked like a lot of them, right? It just looked like honestly, I thought they was intoxicated. I don't know if they were, you know what I
I think they
mean?
were.
But the
Yeah,
way they were
absolutely.
kind of moving and falling and all that, and their coordination, I figured they was intoxicated, and it looked like they jumped them. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? They rolled on them, they jumped them, and then you saw a bunch of people that saw it happening and came to his aid, and then a big fight break out because when that happens, when you have situations like that, you have people that run into those situations, and then inevitably somebody's brother, somebody's girl jump in the middle. Hey, stop! That and a person is on go. They're gonna push that person. They're gonna hit that person, and it just escalates. And
Yep.
that's what it looked like to me. You know what I'm saying? It looked like a type of fight that you would see, in a. We was just talking about festivals and stuff like that at an event like that, or outside. Like it seemed like that's something you would see. I think what makes this situation different, obviously, is where it occurred, right? Because it's Montgomery, right?
Right.
So when we talk about the history of Montgomery, that port, when you talk about the slave trade or the history of Montgomery when it comes to the civil rights movement, right? That's why the conversation has gone to the next level, right? Um, so I understand why the conversation has come to the next level, but I think it's first I want to ask a question before I even make a statement. Heard the captain, who's white, say it was like racially motivated. That was his opinion, right? But
Mhm.
I don't know. I haven't heard the black guy say that they was using any racial slurs or anything like that. So educate me if you've heard that. I haven't heard that. I
He
don't know.
said the person that was attacked, the staffer that was initially attacked, said that they were very hostile, very aggressive towards him. Like they were threatening
I
him. They were
That's what I heard too, right? And he said
saying,
he was holding on for life. They was trying to beat him up, saying we're gonna
yeah,
beat your ASS, all of that. But
right.
so again, these is drunk, angry people. So I think it's a slippery slope. You understand? Because now, if this brawl doesn't happen in Montgomery and it's New York City in the middle of Times Square, are we having a racially motivated conversation? Are people asking the FBI to file civil rights charges? Again, we have to be careful, right? Because those are the type guns we brought out for Ahmaud Arbery, right? Now I'm glad people came to his defense, and it happened to be white people jumping a black person, and they formed together like Voltron and I get it, but I think we gotta now like people are protesting the stores and they want the FBI to be involved. Pull me back, bro. If you know what I mean, like I don't know if that's a little bit of a stretch with the information that we have. You know what I mean? I'll say take this brawl and put it in New York, put it in Philadelphia on Broad and Market. Are we
Right.
having conversations about that? I don't know. So I guess that's where it went a little too far for me. But other than that, it just seems like drunk people that are taking advantage, they're emboldened by the alcohol and the numbers, and they jump somebody. And then you see a bunch of other people like, nah, we're not having that. And they grab that person's back. And that's what I saw. You know what I mean? It got wild.
I absolutely like. I don't want to misspeak, because there have been a lot of different takes around saying some observers, because again on the video you hear a lot of commentary on there,
Right,
and
right, right.
some people are saying, oh, they heard racial slurs being thrown out there. I would have to reread the gentleman his report um that he disclosed. But I mean, a lot of the, I mean, the same question could be asked if, about the racial component, is if the staffer had been white, right? Say the staffer was white and he was asking the group of people to move their boat, would they have had the same reaction? We don't
Yo,
know,
but
right?
these are, and I
We don't know.
understand, like, but see, we gotta, those, to me, those are different questions, right? What
No, totally,
are,
they are.
because there's a conversation to be had about were those white people in that situation, or do white people in general, are they being intentionally resistant and combative with a black man that's in power, right? And deliberately disobeying him. That's a conversation to be had. But we
Right.
can't
That's
automatically assume that. They could have just been drunk people that's like, yo, why you touch my boat? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm reacting off the information that I have, but I see a lot of people assuming with you what you're saying, which I don't necessarily have a problem with. But when I go and look at what the people involved said, the captain said he thought it was racially motivated. He wasn't there. He was on the boat. And the
right.
guy that was assaulted didn't say nothing about, now I don't want this to turn into, you understand what I'm saying? I'm defending the people that did it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I don't know if it's a situation where the FBI needs to be involved. White people drunk one black dude, some other people grabbed his back. Does that mean that this was a race riot? I don't know. But you have to be very careful when you go down that road, because it's putting it in the same category as the resources we requested for Ahmaud Arbery. You understand what I'm saying? And that's why I said I'm basing my reaction off the information we have so far. But I'm glad they grabbed his back because he was obviously unsafe, right? And they were trying to harm him. But whether this was in a city with that history, you know what I mean? We got to be very careful what we're kind of aligning, and that's my personal opinion. So I get it. Most people
The
agree
setting
with what you said.
the setting has a lot to play into it, right? Like you mentioned the significance of the dock. You mentioned Montgomery overall, right? Historically, we
Right.
know what is taking place down there. It's the South, um, and so again, it's the question of all right, is absolutely there's definitely privilege involved in this, right? There's privilege. There's a lot of other different things now. Is it in particular, like
Well,
again,
that's definitely involved.
right? So the question is it white privilege, or is it again just incorporate where it's just privilege due to economics? Is it privilege due to because the person's people were intoxicated? Because he absolutely said that they were intoxicated. He said that when he was trying to
Yeah.
talk to them automatically.
Yeah,
So
I don't think that's in dispute, is that they was intoxicated and belligerent. Like, you can
right,
see that on the video. You understand what I'm saying? And he confirmed that through what he said, and that's further confirmed through their arrests, right? But I don't think the same interview that he gave, where he gave lots of details, bro. He talked for a while about what happened and how it happened and what they said to him. So I'm not defending them. I'm just saying, in everything that what he said, he didn't say anything about anybody mentioning race or anything. The only person that mentioned race was the captain. You understand what I'm saying? And the captain was like, yo, I think the attack on Damien was racially motivated. And he has a right to feel that way because he's familiar with the people involved. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying, all of us watching the video, there's no way we can tell unless the person that's there says, yo, they called me this, or they said that, or they told me I can't tell them what
It's
to do because
easy,
of this.
especially for spectators, to jump to that conclusion just because, again, you see all white, you see all black, right?
Right. So I
It's a
understand that
historical.
part.
So folks
Yeah, I
are
understand that
absolutely
part.
going to take that. They're going to run with it. At the end of the day, this was so unavoidable, right? I mean, this was so avoidable, right? In the case of, like, literally, the privilege involved that was that they felt like the rules didn't apply to them. And then everything just spiraled from there. That the fact that they didn't want to move it, whatever,
Yeah.
everything down there, because if they move the boat, none of this happens, right? At all.
Right.
So that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to, again, just not going lawful. You're not respecting authority. It's the entitlement factor due to whatever variables people want to do. It's a situation where, like, when you think the rules don't apply to you, and now all of a sudden, again, like, I get it. I don't want anybody touching my stuff, my car, my boat, my whatever. And at the same time, it was the way that they reacted to that particular situation,
Of,
right?
of
That's the thing.
course.
You know what I mean?
Of
That
course.
was an extreme reaction to someone who had asked you repeatedly to move your property. You didn't do it because, again, we've seen this even on the road. Like, if your car is parked illegally, it's going to get moved. And so,
Yo,
you know what I
it's
mean?
yo, it's so funny that you say that because the whole reason for my point is, right? This same situation, you can take it out of the water, right? And say my man, they was double parked and there's six of them in the car, and the only person not in the car was the driver, and the black man is giving him a ticket. The driver come out and does that. The
Right.
same thing is gonna happen. You understand what I'm saying? New York, LA, Montgomery.
Right.
That's what's gonna happen in a situation like that. So I again, I don't know, like, yo, and again, bro, I'm saying it's off the information that I saw. If he came out tomorrow and was like, yo, they called me the N-word, they said, you get out of here, you don't belong, whatever the case may be, then we're going down that road. You understand what I'm saying? But I mean, I don't know from what I saw, is what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
listen, the internet is having fun with it. You know,
Yeah.
I get it. I don't have no problem with the memes, all that. I just think, like, and again, if people want to protest outside their stores and all that and make them pay for it financially, that's their right. I'm just saying, like, calls for the FBI, I just think it's a little, unless the guy is saying, like, it's a little crazy. Like the thing with Ahmaud Arbery, like, yo, they hunted him because he was a black man,
Right.
jogging in their neighborhood, right? Like that. This is look like if they were 40 years younger, we would be like, yo, we could see like frat boys doing this. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. We'll see.
I will say. Speaking of spiraling, right? All right. So a lot of times what we've talked about in the past is like just been the influx or the increase, especially since COVID, of the mental health crisis. Like we've seen a significant increase, unfortunately, in individuals reporting their challenges, and one, experiencing mental health symptoms or mental health issues, and then also getting treatment. The part that a lot of times the conversation doesn't focus on off those individuals, especially if we're talking about like children or adolescents, right? We talked about how the increase in their mental health has been in regards to those challenges, is that the parents, right, the caretakers, the individuals that are also involved in this particular situation. So the recent article that came about that talks about parents that are seeing their own health spiral as their kids' mental health or mental illnesses worsen. And as parents are trying to navigate through the mental health care system, uh, a lot of the shortcomings and stress can start and have been taking a physical and mental health toll that disrupts their ability to even provide care for their children. So there are a lot of different variables. Like as I was reading this article, there's a lot of different variables that will start to take, especially in totality, and impact a parent's mental health as they're trying to care for their kids' mental health. So one of the things that immediately came to the forefront for me was that just as a parent, when you see your kid, especially with a mental health issue or mental illness is taking place, is that there's a lot of blame, right? There's a lot of self blame. There's a lot of hopelessness. There's a lot of guilt that a parent's going to put on themselves. Like the immediate question, and this is generally speaking, because it is a case by case and it's an individualized situation. But a lot of times, generally speaking, the parent's going to blame themselves. The parent's going to think about their own shortcomings, what I could have did differently. Am I a bad parent? All these other different things. And that's something that we know, especially with depression, is hopelessness is the key ingredient, right? If you have a high number or a high significant amount of hopelessness, yeah, your depression symptoms are absolutely going to increase. And that comes along just with kind of that blame, right? It's something that parents shouldn't do, but it seems like, but unfortunately, just that comes along with the territory, right? Even though you try to think as rationally as possible and you try to take in consideration some of the circumstances and the situational aspects of variables, but a lot of time, anything that takes place with your kid, especially them being ill, whether they're experiencing depression, they're experiencing anxiety, a lot of times is that hopelessness you feel as a parent because again, it's not something you can also just go out and fix, right? There's so many
Uh,
different ways that we know treating your mental health. It isn't something that like when the kids are younger, you can come up behind them, fix the issue, kind of make them feel better or whatever. As they get older, that's not the case. So hopelessness is one thing that really came to the forefront for me that I know a lot of parents battle with.
well, that's like one thing, right? Like that a lot of people kind of fail to embrace is that mental health, right? Especially when you're talking about somebody under the age of 18, even over the age of 18, if you're talking about severe and persistent mental illness, but it doesn't just affect the person, right? It's going to affect the whole family, right? The whole family system, depending on what your orientation is, right? Um, because again, if you're a parent and you have a 6 year old and your 6 year old, God forbid, breaks their leg or has asthma, you can clear your schedule, go to the pediatrician, get a referral, get surgery, get the leg fixed, right? Take the cast off, you feel great because the child is good, right? Have asthma, get them an inhaler, get them albuterol, nebulizer, whatever. They're back to normal, right? If your kid has depression, there's nothing you can do about it except support them in therapy, right? If they need medication, monitoring and support them with that, right? And reinforce everything that's taught, right? It's a very hands off in certain aspects and controlless process, if that's even a word, right?
Yes, no,
So
yeah,
when you talk about helplessness, you know, being a caretaker for a sick child, right, is makes you vulnerable to mental illness yourself if you don't have appropriate coping skills and support because it's going to make you anxious. It will give you symptoms of depression, right? Hopelessness, fatigue, lack of concentration. It will drive you to increase your alcohol, illegal drug use, cannabis use, whatever it is, right? So vulnerable, absolutely, right? But that's one thing when I'm sitting with parents, even if it's their child's, evaluation, I always set some time aside and I talk to them about getting their own support, right? Because a lot of parents, that's one thing that they overlook. But two things that I think a lot of parents are accepting of is, the fact that because like post COVID, you can engage in therapy the same way we're taught having this conversation, right? Like over Zoom or via telehealth, um, and the old table analogy, right? Like, okay, mom, dad, you could shoulder on, you could keep putting stuff on top because you think, you got to take all the hits for your kid, but when one of them legs go out, guess what? Everybody goes down.
I want to tease out something that you said earlier. You said was the control factor, and like as
Good.
a parent, bro, like not having control is one of the worst feelings that you can have, especially when it comes to taking care of your kid, right? So in the other article we were looking at, the CDC just recently reported that more people have died due to suicide in the U.S. last year or in 2022 than any other year on record, right? They said that there
Right.
was the deaths had increased in 2021 and in 2022 to nearly 50,000, and it's because, or at least what's a contributing variable is that it's that increase of need of mental health care. But unfortunately, there's also been a decrease in availability of mental health care to clients. So now, even though it's more of a need, right? there is a lot less individuals that are getting that treatment, and so now they're isolating, and it's even more stressful because it's hard to find care. That issue is contributing to the increase in regards to the children's and adolescents that don't work in mental health, right? What if you're a parent and you're trying to find healthcare, or you're trying to find a therapist or a counselor for your child, and you're unable to do it? You're on a wait list, or you're in a rural area where you can't get it, or it's just there just aren't enough clinicians. Like overall, that's something that, especially that COVID absolutely highlighted, right? The disparity in regards to getting healthcare. As a parent, you see your kid suffering, and if you're not able to get your kid the services that he need, and again, it's not a, maybe it might not be your health insurance, it might not be, it's the fact that you don't have availability, right? They don't have availability in your area, or the clinicians that you're trying to get them hooked up with, and then you just see your child unfortunately continue to get worse. Like that's it's such a terrible feeling, man, and it's just like it just eats at you. So that control factor, not having that, because that's a factor that's out of your control. Even with, like you mentioned, Zoom and virtual therapy and all these other different things, or teletherapy, but sometimes you got a lot of kids that aren't getting it due to those things that are beyond their control.
I mean, listen, yo, I think we all have seen different things, so I think it's good because it enlightens our perspective, right? And I will agree with you 100%. Like, it's a lot of barriers to these kids getting treatment, right? Especially when they're like suburban kids get a lot more treatment because of the resources. And I mean, I'm really talking about the resources of their parents, not really the
Yeah,
town,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, but you know, I think it's a lot harder sometimes in the city, right? Because there's a lot more barriers.
Totally.
But I mean, yo, me and you have worked in a lot of these nonprofits. Like, there's therapists all over Philly and Jersey. Now, getting to them, you know what I mean, is an issue sometimes. But what I find, and I'm not blaming the parents, right? Because I think parents do their best, right? But one issue I think is when we talk about control, right? I think a lot of parents wait too long, right? So parents are the experts on their kids. They know them like the back of their hands, right? So when you sit down with mom can tell you the day, the year, the month when that kid started behaving anxiously, when they started isolating, when they first made the first statement of suicidal ideation. Usually, with some parents, it's a month ago, a week ago, and that's why they're there. Usually, it's not that way, though. It's usually a year ago. It's usually last summer when they went to see grandma, right? And usually the parent, right, a lot in my experience, tries to take care of the situation, right? So if you're anxious, I'll talk to you about why you shouldn't be. If you're depressed and sad, I'll talk to you about the reasons why you don't have to be depressed. If you're suicidal, I'll tell you that if you commit suicide, I'm going to be upset and you'll go to hell and it's against our religion. And parents do what makes them feel better, right? I mean, as people, it's the same way when somebody dies and we say, oh, they're with the Lord. And me and you know that does nothing to the person that person has lost somebody. It's for you.
Yeah.
It's for you that has said it, right? So that you can feel like you contributed something, right? When all that person really might need is for you to give them a hug or say something nice about the memory of the person or just be there, right? But offer them, and we all do it, right? The intent is there, but I'm talking about what actually happens, right? So I think that's a lot of problem when it comes to parents, right? They wait too long, right? Because this parents should respond to mental health concerns the same the way they respond to bullying the next day, right? There's not a parent on this earth whose kid comes home crying and they're like, yo, this kid is bothering me, and they say, oh, baby, you just go deal with it. No, they're like, oh, I'll be there, right?
Yeah.
So,
Or of how they treat a medical issue, right? Like if your
right,
kid comes home with a sprained ankle, or they're coming home limping, what's the first thing you do? You take them to the urgent clinic, right? You're gonna take them to the ER. Let's get this looked at. I don't know. You don't even play around with it. It's like, all right, well, I don't know. outside of, all right, let's put some ice on, get some Tylenol. But like if little Johnny is limping a little bit, now we're going to the urgent clinic. We're gonna get this checked out right away.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
I agree with you. So I'm not blaming them because I'm not expecting parents to be experts in mental health, right? But I think it goes along with kind of with what is sometimes the expected behavior of a parent, right? Your kid is crying, you talk to them about their feelings, you wipe their nose, and you find a way to make them happy, right? And then when they get happy, you happy again, right? So, but as children get older, right, the needs that's what we do with babies, right? But as a child gets older and becomes like an adolescent, right? We can't when turning we got to understand as adults that turning the page is for us, right? Because you don't want to see the kid depressed no more, you don't want to see the kid anxious, so you'll try to talk them out of it a lot. So that's why caregiver support is important, right? Because a lot of times a parent isn't going to know this unless you tell them in a respectful manner, you know what I mean? Because they're not trying to damage their kid. I to this day, I've met very few, you know, in a single, I can count them on one hand, who are intentionally trying to damage their children. You understand what I'm saying?
I think the early intervention aspect is so crucial for the reason that it affects other different stressful variables, right? So what also sometimes isn't focused when you're talking about like mental health care is the financial component, especially if you're the parent, because you're the one that's funding all of this, right? Whatever type of treatment. The sooner that, and again, just generally speaking, because everybody's situation is different depending on whatever challenges that they're experiencing. But typically, the sooner you're able to get your kid those mental health services, the earlier the intervention, that puts you in a better place, or at least prognosis where you're not going to be having to spend even more money for like because the situation or the symptoms have become more severe. So you're talking about say outpatient treatment as compared to unfortunately parents that have had to have their kids experience inpatient hospitalizations, or if you're talking about a more severe where it starts to manifest or evolve into, you know, severe persistent mental illness, you're talking about possible RTS, right? You're talking about residential treatment facilities. You're talking about medication. You're talking about all these other different advances in regards to interventions. And these things cost. Like even with if you have great insurance, they still cost, right? There's still an out of pocket. There's a copay. There's all these other different bills that you're going to be getting,
Absolutely.
and that's a component that again it's not talked about, right? I know unfortunately I've worked inpatient for a long time and I've had conversations with some of these parents, and it's expensive. It is very expensive to get your kid that, you know, any type of form of treatment, but of course the more severe the more costly it's going to be depending on, you know, where the kid or the type of treatment, right? If it is a situation where they're in an inpatient hospitalization or RTF, those aren't like in your, they're not always located like in your neck of the woods, whether you're rural or a city. Like a lot of these RTFs, a lot of these inpatient hospitals, a lot of these other different facilities are like out way beyond her. And so again, that's a distance factor that you have to put in. So if you want to go see your kid, you got to pay tolls, gas, all these other different things. So the bills of all these little different ancillary responsibilities and debts start to, you know, take its toll. So absolutely the early intervention aspect and just looking at it from a financial component, it's in your best interest, one, to get the kid to care, right, as soon as possible so it doesn't continue to worsen their symptoms. But two, absolutely to reduce your financial aspect of it because that's always involved, unfortunately, gets very costly. And then it's time away that you're taking to visit the person in the hospital, which could also have an impact on mom and dad's job, right? Because you're constantly taking time off to visit the kid, or they're in the hospital, or whatever the case is, or you're constantly getting called back out of school, out of your different job, that could put your income, your situation in jeopardy. So, a lot of it, you know, it's a cycle, but there are some aspects where if you're able to get in front of it early enough or address it early enough, you can kind of mitigate some of the other different stressful components.
I mean, listen, I can't disagree with that. Like that's why, like, listen, when I started, you know, making my statement, I said barriers are definitely an issue, right? Because I do understand that every person isn't gonna, work at a place that where they have Blue Cross, Blue Shield insurance, and where they're gonna have adequate coverage for mental health. But specifically, when we talk about this conversation, and we're talking about like kids that are struggling with things like bullying or some anxiety symptoms, or my advice to parents in general would be, see, we have to get over the stigma, right? Because um, my first suggestion to parents would be to look at the resources that are available to them for free, and that's going to be through the school, right? So every every kid goes to a school, right? And every school has a guidance counselor, right? But most parents, right, they're gonna look at themselves if they reach out to the school for like counseling or support. A lot of people will look at it like, what are they going? Are they going to stigmatize my kid, right? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? It's still that is still a part of it, right? And so it's a barrier, but it's still something that I think a lot of people could take advantage of, but they don't, right? Because it's kind of like if you deal with a family that is involved with the division. Now, nobody wants the division in their home or talking to their kids or division investigation, right? But once you have one, right, the division has a lot of resources that can help you. Therapy being one of them, right? Parenting class, whatever it is, but these are things that a lot of parents don't realize, right? So if your child, because again, right, if a child goes to school and reports that they want to hurt themselves, or all of a sudden you're gonna realize that the school has counseling services, right? Because when the kid comes back, that's what he's gonna be plugged into, right? And when the school calls the division, you'll also realize how many services they have, right? Because then they're gonna get evaluated, and the division is gonna set them up with therapy, right? A lot of times for people that can't afford it. Now, are there other issues that go along with that? Racial disparity in terms of those cases and all that? Yes, but we're talking about one specific issue here, right? Which is people's access to treatment. And if your kid needs help, then there are ways to access it, right? And through the school is one way I think a lot of people don't use, right? So here's what it is.
Thing, right? That takes us to the next part of our conversation is like living with someone with mental illness, which can be difficult, right? Like we're not sitting up here saying that one, getting health care or getting care for your child or your adolescent is easy, right? You just mentioned a whole bunch of barriers. So absolutely it can be hard in your relationship, whether it's your child, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your sibling, whatever the case may be. It can absolutely be very challenging and very stressful because managing their mental health illness or disorder may also become the center of your interaction or the center of your attention. Um, changing the dynamics of your relationship. So what your relationship was maybe previous to the onset of their symptoms is now different due to whatever the severity or wherever they are on the spectrum, depending on whatever disorder that they're experiencing. But there is good news, right? So the good news is living with someone someone that has a mental health issue or a disorder doesn't mean it has to degrade your relationship. It may change it, but it doesn't necessarily mean it has to degrade it or minimize it or change it for the negative. And so even though in spite of the challenges that we just kind of talked about, there are strategies that you can use to deal with the stress while still they're managing their symptoms. And so you and I are going to talk about that. One thing that I think is very imperative is learning about their mental illness, right? Like if you live with someone that has depression, that has anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, whatever the case may be, trauma, it's really important that you learn about what this person is experiencing, right? It's learning about what they're experiencing is not the same thing as like you have to experience it yourself in order for you to be able to be supportive. But you want to know, okay, what is this person experiencing, right? What is it like for them? Like it is individualized for every person, but the more information you get about what this person is struggling with, now you're in a position where you're getting more information, and it also starts to sink in and make sense to you. Like, oh, okay, this explains why this person, maybe this is why they've been behaving differently, or during a certain part of the day, or I notice, why the mood has been changing, more sleep, more active, whatever the case or the symptoms may be. you get that about learning about the mental health, because again, there are a lot of myths, there are a lot of misconceptions about whatever a particular mental health issue or disorder is, and how that's going to impact your loved one. So I highly recommend and really encourage anyone, if your family member, especially someone that you're living with, is diagnosed, is that you absolutely take it upon yourself to get information about their mental health issue that they're experiencing. What's your take,
Yo,
Jack?
you know what? Listen, this is a difficult subject, right? For people, just because, listen, it's kind of like what we were talking about before. Like, it's reasons why they have whole, programs that are dedicated to like families of people who are recovering addicts, right? Or families with people who are gambling, who have gambling addiction, right? Because again, mental illness affects the whole family,
Right.
right? So we just talked about some of the challenges parents have, some of the things they do right, some of the decisions they probably shouldn't make in terms of all with the intent of helping their kid move past it, right? I think we can agree on that, right? Um, but this is a difficult subject because I remember either watching something and having a conversation with people who are actually in this situation, right? And one of the biggest challenges they would have is when their partner was, acting strange or, anxious, whatever, and they would ask their partner, "Did you take your medication?" Right? How do you go about that? Right? Especially if it's coming from an area of legitimate concern. So you have to know, like with certain, when you're dealing with people that have certain challenges, you have to know what you're dealing with, right? Because for some people, that would be a deal breaker on both ends. Asking me if I took my medication, right? And for some people, if I can ask you that, I don't
Yeah.
know. People have a right to fall on both sides of it, right? Um, but you have to take a thorough look at both sides, right? Because if you're the partner, there will be good days and there will be bad days, right? So, and if you're really that person's partner, then you have to go into that relationship with the expectation that on those bad days, you'll carry the water, right? Um, which is I think something a lot of people would sign up for if their partner was struggling with mental illness, right? Now, if as partners you also hold yourself accountable, right? And we know that people that have mental health disorders do things like hoard their medication, don't take it some days because they feel they're okay, right? So if you're that partner and you feel like something is off, can you hold your partner accountable and how do you do it? Right? It's
Tough.
that's a situation that can ruin relationships, right? It can exacerbate some people's symptoms, right? So again, a lot of people look at being in a relationship with somebody that has mental illness as just being supportive, right? You just gotta be supportive. It's a lot more than that,
I think
right?
it's what does this support look like, right? For the reason that supportive is very different from, with Tammy than supportive looks like with Jennifer, right? Or like with Randy than it does with Brandon. And that's where the communication aspect comes in. Like, all right, if we're gonna go through with this, as I'm supporting you, when you're having your challenges or when you're experiencing your symptoms or just overall, okay, this is what, like you said, the accountability part, right? This is how I can be supportive, or what way do you need me to be supportive? Is having that open kind of communication dialogue and saying, hey, if I ask you if you took your medication, right, you not taking it as defensive, or I'm trying to say it in a condescending manner, or if I'm taking a jab at you, I'm asking you, did you take your medication? Like, because I'm asking you, but like becoming defensive, well, I can't express emotion unless like those conversations of what that support looks like have to take place.
That's a slippery slope, right? Because if you're the person without the diagnosis, you bear that weight of not doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not being wrong in a conversation or the other person get agitated, rightfully so, because you said some bullshit or whatever, and you You okay?
Mhm.
Like, oh, and of course, obviously, you know, this a lot of this is, you know, going to be contingent of people's personality and the state they're in and what in the amount of stress they're under and all these things. But my point in bringing it up is just it's not as simple as just emotionally supporting somebody, right? Like with some people who have some different diagnoses, like it impacts their personality and their behavior in some distinct ways, right? And for a lot of people, if they haven't seen it, they don't understand, right? Because for a lot of some people, depression is aggression, it's irritability, right? It's not laying in a bed with my covers over my head. For some people, depression is going to be aggression and irritability, right? And it's going to look something like something else, right? For some people, anxiety looks like that, right?
Absolutely.
Um, so if you have a person who's generally, and I mean, obviously, those are two disorders that are fairly common that everybody can kind of relate to. You can just imagine how those things, you know, can impact somebody's everyday life, right? Somebody with PTSD,
Yeah.
who's hyper vigilant and nervous, and like it can impact your life in a way where you really got to educate yourself, and obviously you got to care about the person, but you have to really know what you're dealing with, right? That's why they have support groups, right? Because um of course you don't want to traumatize the person more, but um you know being a caregiver or being a son of a caregiver or daughter of a caregiver with a mental illness, it affects you. It may make you vulnerable to develop something different, so just a lot. It's just interesting how all of those things kind of are roots that kind of sprout off the same subject.
The opposite end of the spectrum is that, right? We talked about, being supportive, and you have that area of, you communicating so you're not walking on eggshells, right? So you're not at each other getting defensive and things. The opposite end of the spectrum are those people or family members or supportive folks that are too supportive, right? Where they become emotionally over involved with the person. And so that's something that isn't talked about. I think it's frequent enough is that you don't want to make the mistake of being that or trying to be that person's therapist, right?
Right.
That's not right. You don't need to, oh, we need to do this. And you start, okay, you want to get information, that's cool, but don't come in here now because you don't went to Barnes and Noble and got the DSM-5, and now you're coming in and you got all these other different books. You got the CBT by Beck, and you're going to sit here and you haven't had a psychology course since undergrad. And now I was saying, oh, well, you just need to do this, such and such. Like, no, you
So
don't
you
need to do,
said you got the CBT by Beck.
like, you don't need to be your family member's therapist. That's not the way it works, right? Be supportive, be understanding some of the things that we talked about. Absolutely have those conversations, but if they have a therapist, it needs to be by a therapist, right? That's who they need to get their services by. Like there's a fine line between being supportive and then you overstepping and being and blurring those lines, and then you thinking that you're gonna provide therapy for this person. That's not the way it works. You got to save
Listen,
that for the. But it
again,
happens.
again, we
It
got to
takes.
separate intention from reality, right? So all of those family members, all of those people that do stuff like that, they have the best intentions, right? But reality is that they do the person harm, right?
Mhm.
By trying to be their therapist, because every one of those people, everywhere in America and every corner of the world, would always be a horrible therapist for their family because they will all follow the same pattern of behavior. They will be the therapist until they're tired of being the therapist, right? And then they're going to abandon the person, tell them what they really think, respond aggressively, cut off their phone, go back to their life, tell the person they missed the boat because they're not their therapist, and that's not their job, right? Your therapist's job is to be there every week, and that's the problem with mama being the therapist, with the girlfriend being the therapist, because there's emotion involved, the wrong type of emotion, and when that person, it is inevitable. It's the reason why a parent is going to come in there one week and tell you the kid is fine. until you come in there the next week and it's the worst kid in the world. And only 7 days have passed because there's an emotional connection and you run out of patience. You know what I'm saying? So, I get it. Again, we're not talking about intent. The intent is to help the person, right? But it never works out that way because that isn't your job. You're a substitute teacher at best, right? Because the therapist's job is to be there every week, even when they don't want to be there.
Your job
You know
is
what I'm
to
saying?
read.
Like, yo, how many times as a therapist has a client got mad at you and been like, yo, F you, Mr. Kyle, I'm out of here. You're the worst therapist ever. You'll be there next week at 4 o'clock. You can't talk to your mama like that and then come in there 2 days later and be like, okay, now I'm ready to talk again. They're gonna be like, what? You can't talk to your brother like that, your friend like that. Oh, I hate you. You're a piece of shit. You're the worst fucking therapist ever. Knock some shit off your desk, storm out. Fuck you, piece of shit. And then come back in next week. Oh, Dr. J, I was having a bad weekend. And I'm like, yeah, come on in with that apology and let's process it. That's not how your mom or your girlfriend or your friends work. Not saying that they'll abandon you forever, but they're not that. So it is what it is. Like I said, intention aside, that's why we got jobs,
And exactly. And that takes me to the final point is family. You have to put. I'm gonna say this one more time. You have to put boundaries, protections in place for your own self-care. And whether that can look like a variety of things, right? You got to have those boundaries. We talked about conversations. Maybe you need to see your own therapist or psychologist, right? Because you are dealing with this stress because of this relationship that is taking toll on you. But either way, like you mentioned, so you don't have experiences like you just talked about where you got that all or nothing when the person's mood is fluctuating or whatever's taking place, that again, you're entitled to have a reaction because, or feel however you want to because you're human. But big difference, like you said, if those conversations are now becoming volatile and they're becoming aggressive, they're becoming all other different types of things. This is why, as the family member of you trying to support your family member that is having mental health issues, you need to also put some boundaries in place. You need to possibly see your own therapist or psychologist so you are getting support. You have to have all of these things in place because, again, you're going to have some good days and you're going to have some really terrible days. And it's good for you to have your own support. It's good for you to have a place of refuge. Self-care also looking like taking care of yourself physically and emotionally, right? All these other different aspects, whatever you need to do that you're able to protect yourself and maintain your physical and emotional and mental wellness, you absolutely need to do this. Like just going in there, throwing your cape on and being like, oh, I'm going to save Brandon. I got him because I love him and that's going to be enough. I'm going to get through it. No, that's not how it works, right? That's a recipe for disaster. Again, like you mentioned, Jay, the intention is there. However, the performance is going to look like something completely different over the test of time. And it's absolutely, you have to incorporate these boundaries and these practices of taking care of yourself while you're at the same time, while you're trying to take care and support your loved one. But if you don't, it's gonna come out sideways. It's gonna manifest and go in the wrong direction. So I absolutely implore a lot of people to please take care of yourself while you're taking care of your loved one.
Can't add nothing else to that. I agree, bro. Definitely.
So, so there you have it. Another episode in the books, Jay. Anything before we get out of here, bro?
Oh, definitely, man. I should have did this in the beginning, but we got off talking about football. Just want to thank everybody. Take a minute. Thank everybody who takes the time to listen every week. Really appreciate it. Everybody on YouTube, Google, right?
Yep.
Spotify, the other platforms. We really appreciate it. Appreciate people for sharing the videos. And we had some new subscribers coming on the recent couple of weeks, so we appreciate that too. Always humbled, and we'll continue the content. So thank you.
Definitely, I will echo those same sentiments. We appreciate all the support. We're at 400 subscribers on YouTube and growing, so we appreciate that. Continue to share.
And how many on the other platforms, right? Because we almost to 1,000 total, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
5,000 total.
Who's out there? So we absolutely share with people you don't even like. Share it with the people who absolutely need support and therapy. This is what we're here for. They can get that from Dr. J and Dr. Kyle for free for the time being. All right. Jay, before we get out of here, of course, brother, shopmentalhealthclothing.com, ladies and gentlemen. Summertime is here. You can get, you got tank tops, you got the short sleeve, and then you can get, a little cozy for the fall time, because the fall time will be here before you know it. You get yourself a shopmentalhealthclothing.com hoodie out there and be stylish.
Much appreciated. I'm getting ready to shut it down for a couple of weeks, do some revamping, and then, with the school year, I'll be back up. But let them know about Cammy's Closet, that if they haven't been donating and digging your pockets, dig deep, but, give them the website and everything, and Cammy's Closet too, before we get out of here.
Absolutely. Cammy'sCloset.org. That's KAMIS closet.org, guys. Absolutely. Still doing donation events, helping families in need, giving and providing brand new essential free clothing to those in need, to our homeless population here in Philadelphia. If send us a message at Cammy's Community Clothing, on all the different platforms, but absolutely Cammy'sCloset.org for more information. Come check us out. Jay, it's been a pleasure, my guy. All right, we're going to finish watching some of these preseason games and get ready for the real thing, bro.
Always, bro. You already know. Till next time, man. Later.
All right. Talk to you, bro.